Once upon a time, the infamous rover Reynardo plundered the floating isles. Then his mother called him to her deathbed. "Swear to me that you won't die on the gallows," she rasped. Reluctantly, he swore. And he whiled away his days at home with music, cards, and wine. But the Emperor had changed. He'd been good once, a shy, almost humble toad. He'd built universities. Then people started whispering about mass graves in the woods, midnight rituals, victims screaming. The Imperial Ravens would round up entire villages, and no one ever returned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. But the librarians had hidden the books, so they'd burnt the librarians. The citizens, outraged, had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join the rebellion. And Reynardo had promised his mother he'd protect him. The kid was looking down, watching his city burn. "Sorry, kid," Reynardo told the kid. "Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone." "My mother died for this book!" "I promised her I'd protect you." "Oh, damn it." The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Reynardo had to run after him. The two ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. "Hey," Reynardo said. They cocked their heads at him. "Pick on someone as ugly as you." Wait, that didn't come out right.
"For the Emperor!"
The ravens cawed and rushed at him. A dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. the Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the skyship docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels, or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere, and neither are you.
Try and stop me, laughed the kid. I bet you don't even have a hero sword.
And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Renardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? That sounds about right. Perfect. Hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Renardo's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And the ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was, just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. How'd you get across? He asked the kid. Where'd you find a hook? I hopped, said the kid. Wise-ass kid. Hey, look out behind you. Q, said Renardo. Ah, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. Was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Well, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. Stop! He shouted. I'm not giving you the book! Shouted the kid, and took off. No! Peter! But the kid ran for it. and a goggler nailed him with its eye beam. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it. Why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Reynardo picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. What was the big deal about this book anyway? Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him.
Where are you running, rebel?
Cawed the Raven captain over the loud hailer. Reynardo could see them cranking up their catapults.
Just going out for milk?
Reynardo yelled back.
Where can you run?
Laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job.
Take us to the rebel base. I will spare your life.
It called. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven. A sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time. Unless Reynardo could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Reynardo had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Reynardo a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Reynardo could only rescue him. Reynardo dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? No skateboarding, the sign said. People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Reynardo had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice. Reynardo's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or for snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? Reynardo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. Reynardo felt a chill run down his back. Or possibly a flea. Reynardo felt ready to take on new powers. Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew, but she'd never told him who she really was.
She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right,
said Lapino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty.
Interrupted story time.
Caught the lead raven.
Now we'll never find out how it ended.
You blinked. So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait.
Said Lupino, and he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer
A little bit on fire.
Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renardo.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Said Lupino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. Renardo felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Lupino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renardo jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. "Renardo," she said, "are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Oh, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two," said Lupino. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lupino was right, Renardo thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. "You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you?" she said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Renardo saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. "Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost," yelled Lupino. "You have to catch her." Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. Have you ever felt you were just going round in circles? Bernardo felt like that. Good to practice your moves, thought Bernardo. Keeps you limber. He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. I need more materials, thought Renato. Bernardo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. Oh, you left without saying goodbye. Again, he said, please. You're enjoying this a little too much. She said, shaken. Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you? Said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebel secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? The ruins. Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. What if we get separated? Asked Lapino, for once thinking ahead. I'll draw your map to the base. Renato told Lapino. Renato, don't do this, said Zenobia.
We were friends once. We...
Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too, said Lupino. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Renato readied himself for the battle ahead.
I'm sorry I nicked your jacket, she said. It's just... Oh God. It's stupid, but... It smelled like you. What? He said, confused. Then... Why didn't you write? Why didn't you first speak?
Oh, save the romantic nostalgia. Let's go! Shrieked Lupino. So Renato launched himself down the path to the secret base. Renato felt a little better.
I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it.
Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. This used to be the library of Ubar, he said, before your father's ravens smashed it. Do we have to talk politics? She asked. That's not how I want to remember you, she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Lupino huffed. They got back on the trail.
Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug. That was new. Most people still use doorknobs.
Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. It was on fire. So far, so good. Hero wall. Hero sword. Ice wall. Ice. As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Renato felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves!
"You've been playing me?" Renato said, and he stared at Zenobia.
I'm sorry, she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then everything went dark.
When Renato came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat, and her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. "The terrible thing is," he said, "I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?"
I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies, he said.
"The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose." "Oh, never mind," she said. "Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you."
He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided, even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet.
The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running.
But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while.
Nice. That could be useful. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Who needed bridges anyway?
There was an inscription. No spitting.
Renado's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renado thought, he and Zenobia had left sword fu school together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. But not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this.
Ravens didn't smell any better dead, Renata thought.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him.
There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. "Why'd you have to come back?" she said. "Guess I'm just serving my destiny." He shrugged. "You don't even know what that word means," she said. "Do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time?" she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Bernardo lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting.
Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? The air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last. Here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. You always wanted to do that.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renardo. No?
you try it. You're hooked.
How could a temple to Iblis still even exist? The Transcendent Emperor had destroyed all the shrines of the lost gods after exiling them. Had it been buried in that long-ago battle? Or had Iblis foreseen his fate and hidden it from his enemy?
Was that your shield?
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with Tomb Raiders. There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Reynardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "Look to the core," said the stone anxiously. Was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods? Before the Transcendent Emperor? Was it the future? It whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls. Its thirst for blood. All right, I get it.
This was going to be interesting.
Come over here.
The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him. This chest was filled with reprints of the entire Sandman series. Reprints? God, what was the point of collecting those? Ooh, and there was something else. Two eyes good. One eye dead. Zenobia was waiting for Renato.
She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling.
Hey, I'm a firefox,
thought Renato. Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please." "No," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move. "This thing is evil," she said.
She slid the Iblistone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag.
"Maybe we can learn from it." She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. "I missed you too." And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblistone? What did that mean?
Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace. Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? You're a sucker for an empowered woman. Renato kicked himself. Don't make that mistake again.
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword?
He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it? He longed to have it back. He'd felt so good killing ravens with it. And yet, he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox. And then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter. Never contacting him since. Well, who was she to tell him the stone was evil? And while he was trying to recover the stone Zenobia had taken from him, the Imperial fleet was tightening its grip. He might fail to save the rebellion, and it would all be her fault. Renato felt a burst of outrage. Not only had she stolen his gem, she'd also stolen his scientists. Sure, they were neutral, but they had helped him discover what the Emperor was up to. They were supposed to be helping me, Renato thought. So unfair. He was getting nowhere. Fast. Some people were just liable to explode if you upset them. I think this is yours, said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer.
What did you do if one of these platforms stalled?
The scientist's toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections.
Mine, said Reynardo as he took back the stone.
"We need it for science," croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too. "I thought you'd never come for me," whispered the stone. Then, a far-speaker toad croaked in something like Zenobia's voice.
Reynardo, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. You'll kill everyone you love.
But Reynardo had an army to lead, an empire to bring down.
Whispered the stone. It was right. Wasn't Zenobia the Emperor's greatest general? Wasn't Reynardo fighting for the rebellion? Of course she wouldn't want him to have it. "Wouldn't you make a better emperor than Allyson III?" added the stone. You know what? I would, thought Reynardo. Or maybe he said it out loud. He would go see the council and lead their armies to victory. All he had to do was call them on the far speaker. Ah, damn. Well, wouldn't they be surprised anyway? Ah, the ruins. Reynardo had come there as a kid when it was still the fabulous city of Ubar, before the Emperor's ravens had come to pillage ancient books from its library and destroyed it. Now the rebel council lay hidden underneath the ruins. And between here and there, all these ravens to kill. They deserved it for what they'd done to the city. And the faster he could kill them, the more of a rush they gave him. He wasn't that good. Yet. Zenobia, Hypatia, the kid's mother. Reynardo had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. That's my order, thought Reynardo. He was such a wit. He tried to be nice to Zenobia, not killing her and all. What did she do? She stole the gem from him and made him kill all those scientists. Next time she'd see. What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods?
there was a sign. Take the goat across first.
Whispered the stone. Ravens? Renato knew how the stone felt. Each raven he killed gave him a little jolt of pleasure. But he could only kill them so fast, and the pleasure wore off too quickly. Hopefully soon he would face a more powerful adversary. Whispered the stone. But not with a bunch of mangy ravens. Renato had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2.
We'll always have Paris, he thought. And then he died. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Those sheaves were really very well made, weren't they?
As he reached the secret entrance, he was shocked to see Zenobia talking with the council. She bore a white flag.
The council has betrayed you,
Whispered the stone.
kill her.
What are you doing here, love? Renato demanded. Going for the brown muffins?
She's worried about you.
Croaked the council speaker.
We all are.
You're not yourself, Zenobia said. Before they could get into the rest of the intervention, he leapt at her. Unfortunately, the council speaker blocked him, so he slew her and the other council members. I'm not giving up, cried Zenobia as she darted off into the ruins. I think I just killed the entire rebel council, said Renato.
See how much power they've given you.
But they were on my side, weren't they?
No one is on your side, except for me.
He set sail for the fleet. There, at least, there would be enemies to kill. Unless that was the Iblastone talking. He could never be sure. Anyway, who needed other rebels here? They'd only get in the way. A true hero fights alone after he's got all his friends killed.
The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go. This is quite the view, he thought. Wallabies, he thought. Why did it have to be wallabies?
Hey, I got this friend who's a swan. Could he join up? He dyes his feathers. The world was so beautiful. Everything was glowing, breathing, alive. Except, okay, the ravens he'd killed. But the wind was alive, like a million fingers caressing his hair. He'd never felt so powerful. Yeah, he never felt so sexy. Somewhere down the path lived the Emperor. Renato would slay him, most powerful man in Erda. And the Iblis Stone would give Renato all that power. And he would be Emperor. And then he would set everyone free. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. At last, he was face to face with Zenobia. She was still unarmed. No fire crackled from her claws. Excellent. Kill her, whispered the stone. He raised his sword for the killing blow. Is this what you really want? She asked. Or is it what the stone wants? Think of the power, insisted the stone. I don't want to kill you, he told Zenobia, his arm still raised. I know, but he could not put the sword down. It wants blood, he told her. I know. Oh, help me, he said. She stabbed herself. Take my blood, she said. No, you mustn't, cried the Iblis Stone. Oh no! Why did you... He ran to embrace her, and she plunged her bloody dagger into his heart. Why? He said. We'll be together in the halls of the valiant, she said. I love you, he said. Thank you. And the Iblis Stone screamed, and then it began to glow. It burst into flames. It burned like an ember. And then it was ash that blew away in the wind. And Zenobia and Renato died in each other's arms.
Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert, as tempting as it was to explore ancient mysteries. There was a war going on. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in the